And our second speaker is coming on as soon as he gets in here. So, Kelly, I don't know if you want to text us if you're still having trouble, but we need to make you a speaker. And I hate dead silence, and I think everybody's coming on, so I'll start a little introduction here and get us rolling. And maybe Jackie, our co-host here, can keep a watch on our little text in case we have more trouble getting them logged in. So, all right. So tonight we're doing a mindset topic, and we actually have two special guests coming on that are new to Twitter Live. So Jackie's going to help me in the background there and get them activated here. Most of you have been on our show before, and I'm sorry we missed a week. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. That was not ever expected, but our speaker had gotten sick and had a young child sick too. So he will be on next week, which will be our compliance. So just kind of what we do here is myself and Jackie Wentz, our co-hosts, we started this a few months ago. We just try to tackle topics that are important. We try to keep it softball related. So the we're going to set it up and pass the mic. We have some good questions for everybody, and then we're going to ask you guys if you have any questions as we start talking and doing things like this. So as most of you know, I am the owner of Collegiate Sports Advocate, and tomorrow is signing day for the class of 2023. If you're not on my social media, you're going to want to be on it because it's going to be crazy. I think we have about 80 plus alone. I didn't even count today, just CSA. So Collegiate Sports Advocate will have a big day tomorrow. It is not actually our biggest signing class because that class of 23 was really, really a tough one. But also, I want you to note on our Twitter, we have actually pinned a list on CSA_athletes, our commitment list. So you can go in there, and I did sort it and got it pretty up to date. I'm trying to track 23s and 24s right now, and it is read only. But if you've got other people that you see that are, getting committed and you don't know that I've seen it, man, you can text me the name and the Twitter handle and I'll add it, or you can, send it to my email. You can just get it to me in any way. So we also will take questions from the audience, either myself or our co-speaker, Jackie. She is our co-host each week, and she will go ahead and introduce herself next, and then we'll introduce our speaker, Kelly, while we wait for our second speaker.
Totally. So yes, I'm Jackie Wins. I'm pretty much it's somebody who tracks a lot of recruiting for OU. I'm a former two-sport NCAA athlete. Yes, tomorrow's a big day, even for us in the fandom side of recruiting, because I'm trying to get 3 different sports out and all different stuff throughout the timeline. So just overall, big, huge passion for sports, and definitely this topic means a lot to me today. So I'm excited.
And Kelly, I'm going to go ahead and pass it to you until our next speaker comes on and just get rolling. It's always new when you're new to Twitter and new to being. Oh, I see Ricky's there. So I don't know if Jackie, if you want to invite him while we get Kelly introduced here, and then Ricky will be our second speaker. But Kelly and I have been friends for years. I was an infamous 10 and under coach back in the day, and I didn't want to teach the kids how to slide. So I called our local high school coach, and her name was Kelly. And she came out, and lo and behold, she has a fabulous background. She's amazing. And I wanted to make sure that she gets a chance to introduce herself, her background, and then what she's doing today as our speaker. So, Kelly, go ahead and come off mute and come say hi.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, we go way back, Sherry. So no longer teaching sliding, but so my background is I was a Division I athlete, played softball at Northwestern, and then I went into corporate. I've done a lot around emotional intelligence and performance enhancement with organizations. In the last couple of years, I have moved into working. So I'd also been a high school coach and have both played and coached at various levels, including rec with my kids. And so now what I do is I work with not only corporations, but schools and athletic teams and individual athletes on positive psychology, breath work, mindfulness. Really, we try to treat the whole student athlete. And so that's why I'm excited to be on this in this forum and talking about this topic.
Awesome. Well, welcome again. She did partner with us on a podcast that we have pinned on our collegiatesportsadvocate.com page. We have a series of podcasts that Kelly and my ex-manager in corporate America came on. So the next speaker I wanted to introduce is Ricky. Ricky, come on out, introduce yourself and what your background is and where we're going today.
Yeah, hi. My background, my name's Ricky Scruggs. I came from professional baseball, played at UNLV, and then went and I opened up the very first indoor training center for baseball and softball in Tucson, Arizona in 2003. And I had that till 2015. When I owned that, a friend of mine named Jim Murphy was starting a performance coaching to individual athletes, and he was working on the mental game a lot. And I, at the same time, had been working studying a lot of spiritual stuff, and getting my degree in the seminary and all this stuff. And so he was running the questions by me that he was asking, how can a athlete train their whole lives and then be in the Olympics and be focused for that, 10 seconds or whatever that thing, and still not fold to that pressure. And so he was running all these things by me, and I developed this sort of performance model that's biblically based, and I was using it in an addictions facility. Later I went in to worked with addictions, did a lot with counseling and all that stuff, and then I started having a few of my students that I had when they were 8 years old who were now in college, the parents calling me saying, they're struggling here, struggling there. One in particular lost his scholarship through no fault of his own, just because the number game, and it kind of hurt his confidence. And so I began to work with some college athletes on this social model, but also incorporating a lot of the stuff from Inner Excellence that my friend had taught me. And then I also got certified in neurolinguistic programming as a part of the journey. Got into like trauma relief and all these things. So the whole thing culminated in a couple of athletes. One became an All-American and sort of did well. And the biggest thing is that they have a lot of peace and a lot of confidence, a lot of joy, even if their circumstances aren't so great. So now I work with, I've since started doing that full time, and I work with, college and high school athletes, but I also do some marriage counseling and regular counseling, life coaching and stuff like that. But I'm excited to be here because, through talking to Sherry, I hear a lot of the struggles that student athletes are having, and, it's not necessary. It's just a matter of, reframing things.
That's a wonderful segue, Ricky, for really how this conversation and topic came about. It's been a real change, not only since the pandemic, but even previous, just the generational gap from, I was raised by a football player, so it was a whole different level of expectation and language and words. And then, of course, we raised 3 athletes, and there was no excuses. There was no tenderness or softness. I'm sure my kids are listening going, yeah, yeah. And then, I met, introduced Kelly earlier. We met through that. But then what I'm going to do tonight is just kind of come up with and address each question to you guys. So one of the first ones was, and I'm going to let Kelly start here, is what are some of the top issues that you see elite level college bound athletes are facing today, Kelly?
I think one of the main things that I'm seeing is, just having that confidence to go to that next level. I think a lot of times you just think that elite athletes it's ingrained in them. But I think one is having that confidence, and two is that there's so many choices for them right now. With NIL, with the portal, there's just a lot of differences that we haven't seen, in the past. And so I think elite athletes sometimes can feel that there's so many choices that it makes it super difficult to really know what to focus on. And over the last couple of years, there's been interruptions in training. There's been, additional years in school that athletes have had. So there's been a lack of really understanding what that next step is going to look like. So that's kind of what I've been seeing. And believe it or not, I mean, it's that confidence of, I'm going in as a student athlete. Am I going to be able to succeed at that next level?
That's great. And Ricky, would love for you to tackle the same question.
Well, I agree with Kelly. I think all of us have gone down the toothpaste aisle in the grocery store and realized that there's way too many choices, and it's dividing our brains. And so I see the same thing with athletes. But one of the big things I see is the lack of confidence is coming from this tendency to look to the next level rather than just trying to be great at the level that they're at. Because I think of the social media and Instagram, they really don't have a good grasp on how good they are, because of course we know social media shows the very best side, and if you watch ESPN, you only see the superstars when they're being superstars, not when they're going 0 for 4 or Kane 3 times or whatever. And so I tell my athletes, make sure you watch the games, not just the highlights, and make sure that you look at the level you're at now and strictly try to be engaged with it and be dominate this level and not worry about the next level so much, because they project themselves, they look at themselves, and they're not even fully grown or developed, and they can count themselves out too soon, I think, and instead of letting the chips kind of fall where they may. And so we try to get them to get engaged and present. I mean, of course.
Fantastic. I love it. And I wanted to mention, if you see us, flipping these little hearts and claps and things like that, that those emojis are down there at the bottom and you can add to them. And also, if you want to add something or you have some questions, you can either private message myself or Jackie, our other co-host, and we can read them out. We don't say your name if you want to be private about it. And then we will carry on to the next question. So, Kelly, what advice do you have in regards to mindset and being ready for college and the recruiting process, which is also stressful?
I think to Rick's point, being present and staying in the moment is probably the most important mindset tool that you can have. And the other thing is just being clear about what your intention is. And so I think a lot of times we may be looking at what's that next level, and I want to make sure I go to this school without really understanding what that means. So I think the clearer you can get about what your why is for playing, what your focus is for going to that next level, because for a lot of student athletes, that next level may be it for them. And so getting the education, getting the experience, being in a program that highlights their strengths and will allow them to thrive, I think is very, very important. So as a student athlete, we try to talk to them about really figuring out what they're trying to accomplish and why it's so important for them to play at a certain school or to target that certain school. And especially if sometimes you target it when you're super young and you've changed over the years, and some kids are afraid to let go of that initial, oh, I wanted to go to this school. But the more real they can get about what that next level is going to look like for them, and the more they can stay present in the process from a mindset perspective, I think is very critical.
And Ricky, feel free to come off mute and add to that.
Well, yeah, I think that the question was twofold, wasn't it? It was like what with the recruiting process, and then what to do about going to the next level. I think recruiting process, to me, I try to make sure that they understand that you may have, as Kelly said, put your sights on a certain school or you want to be somewhere, but that their experience is largely going to be shaped by the coach. And to do most of, look at the school, you look at the field, you look at the, reputation, everything, but the coach, if you can find out as much as you can about them and the way that they handle their players and the way that they handle things, that's going to shape your collegiate experience, like largely. And then the other part is just a sense of belonging that you need when you go to whatever school you end up going to, really comes from your sense of service to that school rather than that school serving you. We try to flip the script because a lot of people are very focused on, what they're going to get out of the situation and what's going to happen for them, and then you start to wonder, do I fit? Rather than if you come there with the intention of serving and of, of building something along with your coach, you sort of automatically have this sense of belonging that I think that's one of the things I've seen lacking the most when I talk to my student athletes. They've even gotten recruited to that school, or they've even, they're doing okay, but they don't really kind of understand that this is it. This is the now. Like this is your big leagues right now. And if you're going to be a major league player, or you're going to, if you're a high school softballer and you're going to play at a really high level in college, you're that player now, and you can walk and talk and be that player and sort of own that now. And if you spend too much time thinking about the future and not thinking about it, you're going to miss the experience by not being, like we've talked about so much, present and engaged.
That's amazing. Jackie, do you want to add anything? I know you've been that student athlete most recently. How are you feeling with this?
I think there's a point in every athlete's career where there's that feeling of you're ahead. You're always ahead. Thinking that next step. Depending on what sport you play. What are you going to do after? You're always thinking ahead. I think it is so important to just think about the now and focus on each practice as you get to it, each game as you get to it. Because if you keep thinking ahead, right, you're not doing your mental work right then and there and able to settle in and play your best because you're never fully there and ready to go. And that's really, really hard to do. I mean, of course, I reference OU because this is a school that I know best. But if you really look at what Patty does in terms of, focusing instead of just always looking at, let's say the championship and things like that, being able to take each game and settle your mind, it's a big task, right? Especially with NIL. Now you have another factor in. So I think that there is a lot to be said if you can learn how to settle your brain and refocus and take a deep breath before each time you step onto the field. There's something special to that not many athletes can do, and I see it even in my high school athletes that I coached. They're already thinking about the game and they're having anxiety about the game, but the whistle never blew. So being able to stay present is huge.
Awesome. That was great insight. And you actually gave the key word for what I'm kind of expecting the next question answers to be is, do you have some mindset drills or tips or techniques? And maybe this time we'll start with Ricky and then go to Kelly.
We do a lot of different things, but one of the things the three pillars that I try to build is love, courage, and wisdom. And so, let's say the wisdom side, you would talk about expanding your vision. And so one exercise is to, and fortunately nowadays we have like Google Earth, and so you could Google the park or wherever you're going to be for your next tournament or your big college series that's coming up, and you sort of picture yourself in a helicopter's view above, and realize that you see yourself sort of above yourself, and see yourself above the city, and realize that there's 800 million Chinese people that don't even know that there's a game being played. And so to gain some perspective on that this is a game, and that it's designed for you to learn and grow, and that's what you're trying to do, and that you're there even for your opponent. One of the main mindset things I have is that you want to raise your level of excellence in order to raise it in others. So not only are you there to play well for your team and for your coach and for the fans and for your family, but you're actually there for your opponent. And so that's the idea of being engaged with them and giving them the best that you have, and realizing that you can't give them everything you have unless you're there. And so there's lots of presence exercises that would do to try to learn how to be present. One example real quickly is to sit and try to hear the loudest sound you can hear and the softest sound you can hear while controlling your breathing. And so you would become, as present as you could in the moment there. And I teach people to do that right outside the batting cage or in between their rounds or on deck. And it's just a mindfulness exercise. But yeah, it's hard to come up with all of them right here at the moment, but those are mine for now.
Excellent, Ricky. And Kelly, I know you can add to this because you and I have had this discussion.
Yeah, I think Ricky, those are great. One of the things that we focus a lot on is obviously breath work, and a lot around what's going through your mind. So the self-awareness piece of it. So some of the mindfulness exercises we actually do start with being self-aware of kind of what is going on with your thoughts and feelings and how you're executing those. So, things around understanding what you can control and what is out of your control. So I think a lot of people are familiar with kind of the circle of control. And so one of the things that we work in it, and it's a great exercise throughout a season because you find yourself, I think Jackie mentioned it, getting too far ahead. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And if you can just focus on being in the present and are the things that you can control. And so we try to remind them, actually working with a cross country team, and they're going into CIF right now. And the biggest thing is keep reminding them what they can control as opposed to them thinking about what the outcome's going to be. And so we focus a lot on that kind of mindfulness that says, let's do some breath work to get ourselves centered and then think about what's in your control. And a lot of times it's attitude and effort. And so it's simplistic, but it's something that the kids can always come back to. And I think it keeps them very grounded and centered.
I was not quick on that mute there. It just had me some memories in the early 70s. I'm aging myself here. But my dad, being a football player, said if we didn't run track, we weren't athletes. So we ran on a competitive track club for 3 years with some highly decorated Olympians, but they taught us about a focus point, targeting on the back of the person in front of you and literally putting your mind on their back until you passed them. So I'm wondering if you had any other additional mindset things like that.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good one where you're focused on being when you're in that moment. So from like a track perspective or a cross country perspective, it's you kind of chunk out the race. And it can be the same thing with practice is you're chunking out no matter what sport it is, you're just chunking out the next step as opposed to trying to get 5 steps ahead of you. So one of the coaches I work with, he calls it kind of Pac-Man. So you're trying to eat that next person, you're trying to pass them. And so instead of having this focus on, if you're a softball player, the 7th inning, you're just focused on your next at bat or the next play. And it's kind of the same as if you're a cross country runner, you're looking at, okay, instead of looking at I'm on mile 1 and I've still got 2 miles to go, you're just looking at the person you want to pass or the area you're trying to get to. And so that again is very mindful and is something you can apply to each sport. You're just looking at where you're at now and what's that next play right in front of you. I don't know if that makes sense, Sherry.
It sure does. It sure does. And I just noticed in the audience while you're talking, many of them are parents of student athletes. We have student athletes. We have travel ball coaches on. We have a good variety. My next question might help them all. How do you help the parents? What role do they play? And what shouldn't parents be doing? So what should they be doing and what shouldn't they be doing to help with mindset issues? Oh, and if you want to go, Kelly, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah, so this is always, I think, having been a student athlete and then as a parent and also as a coach, seeing like the 3 different perspectives on this. Unless you're coaching your child, the parent's role is really to be their parent, to be their support system, and in my opinion, and especially from a mindset and a mindfulness perspective, we have so much power as parents over what we say that we don't even realize it. And so the more that you can be supportive of your child as opposed to critiquing or helping, like things we think are helping that are right around their performance can be taken from a student athlete, and it can really hurt their confidence, or raise the expectations to where it feels too much for them. In addition, the one of the greatest things about being a student athlete is learning how to advocate for yourself. And I think sometimes parents try to advocate for their kids as opposed to try to help them have tools to advocate. And from a mindfulness practice, that's super important, because what we're trying to do is build kids up to where they believe in themselves and they can advocate in all situations. And so as parents, if we're always advocating for them, we're hurting their confidence without really understanding it. And even though our intentions are very good, sometimes intentions and reality can be disjointed.
And Ricky, what can you add to this? This is a loaded question.
Well, yeah, I think in an ideal situation, whenever I work with an athlete, I'll usually have a good long session with both parents and try to let them know what we're trying to accomplish. I mean, the more they understand the real goal, and really what we're talking about is character, and we're trying to build character in the kids, and so that they can be functioning adults in college. And the main thing is like, when we measure performance, I tell my athletes are measuring their performance by, was I mostly grateful? Was I mostly present? And to Kelly's point, did I focus on what I could control? And the fourth one is, I forget what it is now. But regardless, I go to them and we talk about, did I give 100% in love to everybody around me? And we want to make sure that the parents are focused on those four attributes too when they're talking to a kid on the way home from the game or whenever they're, you know what I mean? It's more about how did they feel? Did they control their state? How did they approach it rather than focus on results? Because we make sure that we understand that results, we don't know what a good result or a bad result is in the long run. And so we don't want to focus too much on that. And then also to Kelly's point is the words that we use. I tell the parents, don't stop, helping and coaching and supporting, and don't do all that, but make sure that what you say is putting the picture that you want in their head, so in other words, the brain doesn't hear don't, so if you're telling them, you don't hustle, or you're not, when you're speaking life or death over them, rephrase what you're saying, parents, make sure that if I don't want you to swing at the high pitch, I don't say, hey, don't swing at the high pitch, because that puts a picture in the subconscious mind of me swinging at the high pitch. I would say, hey, let's take above the hands, and that puts a different picture. So if they can mind their words, and I start teaching them along with, whatever I'm teaching the athlete about their self-talk, the parents usually really enjoy it too, and they're like, the child can catch mom, catch dad, and to make a game of it, to watch your words and watch your mindset. But yeah, I think training the parents along with the kids is the best, possible avenue. And it usually works pretty well.
Well, I'm going to insert here a little bit because you triggered my mind on their body language too. Now, I'm somebody coming in from afar. I'm not there the whole game. I'm usually talking to college coaches, but I see the energy of the parents. They're huffing and puffing and arms are crossed, and lots of anxiety, pacing up and down. Any advice for them there, Ricky?
Yeah, what we talk about is the problem is not the problem. The problem is the state that you enter because of the way you're thinking about the problem. And so, you're actually helping me right now think, man, there's so much I haven't gone over with parents. I deal with mostly college athletes, and they're already away from home, and I don't really, but I realize that there's a lot of communication there, and there's a lot of, it's like you said, when your parent was really tough on you, when you tell a child, you need to do better, what you're subconsciously telling them is that you believe they could do better. But when you blame the coach or coddle their situation, what you're telling them subconsciously is, I don't believe you could do it. I need to, circumvent the situation for you. So I think the most important thing is working on your own beliefs. Like, what do I really believe my child's capable of? And if I'm going to ask them to control their body language on the field, I've got to try to control my body language off the field. I tell them, you want to be like a lawyer, right? Something bad comes out, A lawyer doesn't slam his pencil down or huff and puff. He acts like he knows exactly what that was and knows exactly how to handle it, even if he has no idea. And so, you know, yeah, it's you're informing me right now that I need to talk to parents a lot about their body language, you know, because that hasn't occurred to me as much as the players' body language.
Excellent. Kelly, you have some thoughts to add here?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of what expectations are come into body language. So, you know, similar to what Ricky said is, you know, whether you say it or you feel it or you show it in your body, the energy is there. And so I think, you know, if parents can get really clear about what their expectations are uh, and understand that, you know, how they approach it, how their body language shows up. People are watching, and sometimes it's just your child. Other times it's, you know, who they're being recruited by. And so I think, you know, as parents, we play a bigger role than we probably realize. And I know, you know, just even at home, when I get upset and I'm trying to calm myself down, my kids pick up on my body language. And so having, we do a lot around self-regulation and ways to kind of be more centered in the moment. So with parents, we try to talk to them about that also is, you know, if the games are really tough for you, then maybe you need to be in an area where your body language, you're going to be able to process what you need to process without it affecting, you know, those eyes that are on you.
So the next great question, we'll start with Kelly, is are the parents coddling or protecting or causing additional expectations for them? And so it might be a little leeway into where we were, but thought that the coddling word is a very popular word right now.
Yeah. So if I mean, I guess the way I interpret coddling, that is, it's kind of what I talked about a little earlier of, you know, are you advocating or are you the one who's going and trying to win the battles that, you know, as a student athlete, the student athlete should be trying to win, whether it's playing time or it's, you know, different questions about performance. But you can also go too far as a parent is saying like, oh, it's not your fault, or, you know, not helping the student athlete accept responsibility when and accept that, hey, maybe they need to put in a little bit more effort, that they control their attitude and effort. And so I think that's where sometimes you see parents that that don't really hold their kids accountable to that as far as attitude and effort. And obviously you don't want to do it right after a game, but that's things that you can teach. So I think sometimes and there are certain, you know, parents that you see that they do seem to be coddling a little bit more. And then on the flip side, what I hear a lot, and both Ricky, it would be really great to hear your perspective on this, and also Sherry, is that there's so much individual coaching and additional costs now in some programs that sometimes parents talk about the investment they're making, and not as, I don't think it's malicious to kids, but that tends to put an extra layer of pressure that I hear from some student athletes. And so it's a little bit different on that.
Yeah, Ricky, I'll let you follow up there.
Yeah, I absolutely heard that before, and I think it's a real caution that we need to give parents because, you know, it's like this underlying attitude or this underlying thought that this has to pay off. Like I have to, you know, we've invested so much time, energy, and effort that this has to pay off, and again, that becomes, you know, focused on results and it raises the expectations. And I think what you were saying earlier about body language and how your energy precedes you, I think the most important thing is for a parent to check themselves and really, you know, start with why. Like we always hear is, why are we doing this? What is the reason that we play? You know, I take the kids, the athletes at least, all the way to the nth degree, all the way to the highest level they can imagine, and the highest success and all the accolades, and then what? You know, and why is it such a big deal? The reason why we love the big stage is because it's a social event. And bringing it back to relationships and bringing it back to the fact that it's social and making that your goal. What's my relationship like with my coach and with my fellow players and with my, son or daughter? When I make the relationship my goal, it's a really powerful, actually, seed for performance. You actually play better. But when you're putting this huge onus on them that this has to work out and we've got to get, if for lack of a better term, paid back for all this investment, it really does, I think, harm, in the end.
That's great. Kelly, did you want to follow up on that before our next question? Or?
The only thing you kind of made me think about something is, and I can speak for myself as like what I looked at and what changed for me a couple of years ago is that I was always looking at what I could accomplish, and I was never enjoying what I was accomplishing. So it never, and I think when you start at such a young age of having it feel more like a responsibility than like Ricky, to your point, more of a social experience also. And when we start looking at outcomes versus kind of the journey, it starts to build that. And I know for me, that was something that every accomplishment I had, whether it was in high school, college, in my career, I always was looking for what was going to be next. And that is not a bad thing if you can balance it with enjoying the experience along the way. And so that's, I don't know if that speaks directly to the question, but sure, that kind of was something that came into my mind.
Excellent. Well, I think we'll switch to the next one. And I struggle with this one because, of course, I'm on TikTok and I see a lot of the trends of just this, mindset and place that they're struggling mentally. But is it really mental illness, or are these some life struggles? I just wondered, Ricky, if you want to go here first and talk about, how do you identify it? What kind of advice can you give some of the coaches and parents on here for the difference between the struggle and true illness?
Well, I've having worked at an addictions facility for about 2 years, I've dealt with true mental illness and trauma, and what I see in athletes, at least the athletes I've worked with so far, is far from an actual mental illness. They seem pretty well adjusted. There is, doing a lot of work with NLP and trauma relief therapy and all that stuff. I bring some of that to the coaching, and there are things that happen, pre-age 8. I find athletes that are, self-sabotaging because they were always the good one, and their older brother or sister was always getting in trouble because why can't they be more like them? And there's some psychology, I guess I would say, that's going into some performance blocks and things like that, and I like to address that stuff. But I haven't seen, legitimate mental illness as far as in the clients that I've had. Now, I have heard that there's some serious, mental illness problems or real negative thoughts for athletes, but I'm sad to say that I think that they keep that inside really, really well, many times until it's too late. And so, I would just encourage any athlete, if you're seriously having bad pressure to the point where it's not just about failing, you need to reach out to a professional, because that's you've really lost sight of what this is if you realize it's not it's just it is a social thing. It is about the relationships, and like I said, if you go all the way up to the Super Bowl, we love it because so many people are involved, and there's tailgates, and it's all and I always try to bring people back to the relationships, and if you're focused on building strong relationships and what's my relationship with my opponent, and keeping that healthy, I think it keeps the mind healthy. But when the relationships break down, when there's sort of a block and a child doesn't feel like they can speak freely, or that they somehow I don't know, that's a subject that, like I said, I've done a lot of counseling with people that had some pretty serious mental health issues, but when it comes in the context of sport and collegiate sports, I haven't dealt with it.
Excellent. Well, we've got our co-host with her hand up. I would love to see what Jackie's input is here. And then Kelly, if you just want to naturally follow when she goes on mute, that's great.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think it's really important that as athletes, sometimes it's hard to self-monitor because you're so used to that like dopamine and adrenaline kick when you're performing and that, ability to calm yourself down. That cycle sort of becomes contagious. And it's hard to see outside of that until, you're in a space where, it feels like it's daunting and it feels like it's, uncontrollable. So what I like to say is, like, while you're in high school, for a lot of you that I see down here now, it's important that you set those relationships and you set that bar so that this way, you understand how to do that in the collegiate atmosphere as well. And that coaches should also foster that system of checking in normally without instances occurring or, somebody seeing red flags, but that we understand conversation and relationship conversation because often we wait till that point. And so how do we create our culture to include mental health and to include perspective so that it isn't just something that, it has to be triggered to occur and that it's just a part of what we do. And I think that if we can figure that out and we can start athletes focusing on themselves and programs and coaches and really figuring out how to mold all of that, I think there's a key to that, to making this a well-rounded ordeal.
Yeah, and Sherry, I think you and I have talked about this in the past. This is kind of one of the main areas that a lot of our programs deal with, is trying to get athletes to be able to articulate kind of where they're at. I think there is, especially with elite athletes, there is a stigma that's attached to it. There's some great organizations that are out there. Morgan's Message is one that I've worked with in the past that, that they talk about mental health at the collegiate level and even in high school, and their ambassador programs. In addition to that, there's and Sherry, I hope this is okay, I'm giving kind of some areas like where coaches and players can learn more. There's a thing called the Mental Health First Aid, and it's an awesome program. It has the model is called ALGE, so it's teaches you how to approach athletes or students in general. And there's both a youth component and then there's also a adult component. So it's similar to like first aid, but it's the mental first aid. And it's based on approach. You listen non-judgmentally, you give reassurance and information, you encourage appropriate professional help, and then you encourage self-help and other support strategies. So it's a day-long program. It's put on by a variety of different nonprofits usually, but it's called Mental Health First Aid. Some schools have their counselors do it. I've went through it because of dealing with a lot of athletes, and where you want to understand, is it just stress in this situation, or is it something that's moving towards more of a mental illness around anxiety or trauma, or different things that happen with kids and with young adults, anywhere from 14 and up. And so that's a great resource for everyone to be able to just at least learn how to have some of these conversations. It's not how, unless you are a licensed therapist, it's very difficult to diagnose. Is it mental health or is it mental illness? But this allows you to foster the discussions around it. And I think the more, like when we work with coaches and teams, we try to get that kind of environment going so that players feel comfortable enough to talk about some of the struggles they have, like Jackie's saying. So it feels like a more safe environment, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to get benched, or people are going to look down on me, which is I think how a lot of us were raised. So anyways, that's kind of my feeling on this part of it.
That's great. And Jackie, I don't know if you can explain to Kelly how to, I think it's reply to our Twitter where she could add that link, and that way it's lasting on our page in case people want to resource that.
Sure. If you have to post a tweet first, if you want to put it up in the nest, we call it. But if you want to just make it a reply, if you see on the bottom right, it looks like a message. You hit that, and then you just comment that the space post, just as if you would to any response to Twitter.
Jackie's our fabulous Twitter live expert, so we appreciate her. She's the brains behind this engine. She's the one that got me started out here, so I appreciate it so much. And I want to reach out to you guys right now, and just we've had so much content and so much information. I'd love to hear questions. You can private message myself or Jackie while we're still wrapping up here. But I wanted to make sure that you guys know you could follow us. We love to connect with you. You can connect with us going forward. Next week, it's going to be our topic is going to be compliance in the softball, mostly Division One area, and it is going to be action packed. This guy has so much content. Make sure you share it with your friends. We really, really want to get this space going. And I apologize again for our speaker last week being sick, but he is the one coming up next week. So he is the compliance officer at Pitt University. So he's got a wealth of information. He's got a legal background. But I wanted to just sincerely thank Kelly and Ricky, in case you guys still want to ask questions. We're just wrapping down. But man, and Kelly's not only been a lifelong friend, but an amazing person and what she adds to this. And Ricky and I are new friends, but he and I have partnered up on a couple clients where I'm their recruiter and he is their support system there. So it's just been amazing, and we have a lot of faith in common and things that we do. So I just wanted to tell them personally, each of you, how gracious and grateful we are that you're here, and we continue to invite you back. And then anybody else have any questions or a topic or a question we didn't cover? If you want to text us real quick. And Jackie, you want to say anything about signing day tomorrow and how excited we are?
Yeah, my goodness. I feel like it's going to just be wild across the softball world tomorrow when you have the 23s finally get to ink, where they're going. I think there's going to be a lot of excitement, a little nerves, but overall, you will see the timeline being flooded. So I'm super, super excited for the softball world along with all the other sports. We still have to wait for basketball and football stuff later down, but right now it's going to be an awesome day.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And again, if you didn't hear me earlier, I do pin a link to a spreadsheet, and it is a national softball commitment list. It's not just CSAs. It's obviously heavy with my clients in Texas Glory because of those relationships. But man, send me over teams. Tell me who's committed. I'm trying to do this because nobody else is doing it for free. I don't think you need to pay money to subscribe to something like this that's out there, and everybody wants this recognition. So it is pinned for free up on our Twitter, which is CSA_athletes. And I think we might close out a little early here so we don't have any questions. And we already have our topic for next week. But if you want to come again every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central Time, we almost messed Ricky up with his Arizona time today. But we want to thank our speakers again and thank all of you for coming.
I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here. It was really informative for me too, and just really wonderful. Appreciate this.
Fabulous, Ricky. We appreciate it too. And Kelly, any parting words?
Same. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you bringing these topics up because they're so critical right now. And I'm very thankful for our friendship over the years. So I'm glad that we can do some of this stuff. And I learned a lot also. So thank you. And that's it.
Excellent. And thanks again to our fabulous co-host, Jackie. She's our engine, our spark plug. She makes this all happen. So have a great week, everybody. Yep. And we'll see you all. Follow our Twitter tomorrow. It's going to be flowing and flooded full of commitments. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Good night.